we're going to get into a word of our sponsor. I don't have a sponsor for this channel. Within the concepts of what we're going to be talking about today is that we are going to talk about forgiveness and how forgiveness can lead to two sides, one being that of chaos and one being that of redemption and or grace. Now, with that being said, here are the concepts on what I see in my point of view. My point of view is that forgiveness fits both the ties of a message explaining action. The action really does signify the status of if somebody should understand on where the trust has been broken at. Meaning that when it comes down to a hard form of trust, which is definitely not an easy thing to give out and very fragile once it is shattered and very hard to rebuild once it's broke. Now, looking at that concept is when we look at the idea of where does forgiveness fit? How is forgiveness even taking form? Where is the life force of forgiveness to begin with in the first place? One thing that is the open concept of forgiveness is that we have the choice of either forgiving somebody in the way of letting them live or forgiving them in the way of letting them die. That's just a crazy thing to happen, right? In order to seek forgiveness when a violent concept, one has to understand that if a life is taken, then that's where the forgiveness is made. That's when a person can actually find true peace and then going from their everyday life and reliving that the person that caused them harm will not cause them harm anymore. I will head into the gray side where there'll be people who understand that violence isn't the answer. However, a good understanding of making an example of you is, such as helping out in the community or having somebody work with somebody that they hurt in order to understand why they hurt them and then, seeking a fine line of forgiveness. Or putting two people on a random ass island and letting them figure it the fuck out. But within the understandings of different concepts of forgiveness and the different sides that we see in forgiveness, the only thing is that how hard is it to forgive yourself versus forgiving somebody else? Which weighs the most in the terms of forgiving somebody? Would you rather take them out of existence or would you rather give them a chance to survive? Within the ideas, it's also in the confines of redemption. Redemption is a very big thing. It shows that there can only be two sides. It's like a double-edged blade, like a double-edged sword in a way, where you would want to forgive somebody and tell them how they're doing by showing them that they can work and find their values. Or you can forgive by, again, just having that person executed, and then at some point that person that did the executioner is now uplifted, the weight has now become off their shoulders, so now they can freeform and do what they want. And within this two-edged blade, it works in so many ways that are just beneficial and so many ways of consequence. When the art of forgiving has its challenges, such as vengeance, if you want to forgive somebody, you gotta kill them or make sure that you get even with them. Only then can they be understanding that you are forgiven. Or it could be the side of redemption, where it's like, hey, if you want to redeem yourself, if you want my trust, if you want to gain my stability of understanding you, that you got to go through these trials, because these trials are not as easy. And if you can understand these trials and understand the message of why I'm putting you through these trials, then yes, you are now forgiven and you're welcome to be a talkative person among me once again. Basically, all I'm saying is that ties are similar between vengeance and redemption when trust is broken, and yet does forgiveness have to be violent or does forgiveness have to be settled? That all happens within the compounds of dumb shit. It's a hard decision to come by, and you can understand it when two sides really do hit, when somebody feels a type of way or somebody has embarrassed themselves past the beyond point. Case example, somebody goes to prom, a couple goes to prom, and the guy gets a drink spilled on him. Now he's upset and he ends up beating the shit out of the person that threw the drink at him. Now he's upset because he had to watch some of his prom date. Prom date's probably not feeling so good about the whole ordeal. Just a hypothesis. It's a moment to where you feel something so bad, you just don't know if you'll ever be forgiven again. And that's where self-forgiveness comes in, because that's an even greater challenge. Self-forgiveness fits a whole challenge to where you would want to try and get rid of all these memories that get into your head, all these Akira flashes of everything that you did that was embarrassing from like years ago, and it's just hitting you now. All of a sudden you're trying to figure out why, of all times, of all places, just this shit have to happen now. And I think it's the understanding message that, can you forgive on what just happened? Like, you did this action, or you were part of this moment. Can you accept that this happened? If you can't, then I guess it'll just continue flashing until you find a point where it's like, oh hey, I was a part of that. Or I did do that. Or I was there. How about that? Well, that's just the status, because, getting down into forgiveness, it fits a very hard ties. Not many people can choose the path of forgiveness, and not many people can understand forgiveness doesn't have to take years. I guess depending on what you did, but still, forgiveness plays a hard tie, and it's just like trust. You would just have to go through challenges to understand that trust can be built, but there's two stages of it. There's redemption, and then there's vengeance. So, but they both fit hand in hand in action, basically. So, just looking at that status, it's actually pretty funny when you look at how so many times people can actually just take the easy way of finding grace. Yeah, it could also be a rush feeling. When you want to take vengeance, it has no feeling. You just want to get the thing over with, and when you have that moment, you just know that you're so close to peace, or so close to an even settling goal. It happens to the best of us, so. But that is all the time that I have, so thank everybody for listening today, and well, the only reason why I got this is because I don't really like fidget spinners. And well, I can't really see myself having a real gun because at some point, I do have like a trigger finger. I've shot this thing like several times, and good thing it's just a toy. I mainly just use it for the hell. Yeah, I mainly use it for this purpose. Simple as that. Tuck it out, and I put it in. Tuck it out, and I put it in. Hell, I could do a John Wick moment if I wanted to. And I'm being annoyed. So, but I hope everybody has a good time and y'all have meetings. So, take care. Now you don't want to give it, huh? Now you don't want to give it, huh? What's wrong with you? You're crazy. Oh. Damn it. Peace out.